with us, giving lectures on enabling the world's police to meet the challenges of fighting international crime. Fanny Ewann is a specialized officer at Interpol, working in the CBRNE and Vulnerable Targets Subdirectorate. She focuses on bioterrorism risk assessment, intelligence coordination, and law enforcement training programs, and she collaborates with international security agencies to enhance preparedness against biological and chemical threats. So I now leave the floor to Fanny, and yeah, running here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So been working for Interpol for 8 years, but I'm almost 8 years, but I'm a microbiologist by trade. I work with a lot of law enforcement. I don't know how many of you are law enforcement. Civil defense, okay. Law enforcement. Civil protection, maybe? Before, okay. Civil protection, anyone? Firefighters? Okay, so I work a lot with those two. I work with veterinarians, with public health, with customs. Any of those around here? We work with a lot of people to fight bioterrorism, but also to prevent any kind of biological incident. This morning, we are going to talk about a lot of different things related to the investigation of biological incidents. But I'll start by introducing Interpol. You might have an idea of what it is. You might have an idea of what it is based on movies and TV, and it's not exactly what we do. So Interpol was created over 100 years ago. It's one of the oldest international organizations that exists in the world. And it was created to enable the world's police to meet challenges of fighting international crime. In the past, a criminal had just to go across the border to be free of any investigation and prosecution because there was no exchange of information from one country to another. So in 1914, a small group of countries in Europe thought we need to have the possibility of exchanging information about criminal activities and criminals in order to stop those criminals from moving from one country to another and continue doing their criminal activity or escape prosecution and the justice system. So that's where the idea came from, and the organization formally was established in 1923. So the it's not working. Let's see. So the first purpose of the organization was to exchange information about those criminals who were going through the borders. But crimes have increasingly become international and connected, especially with the advance of internet and travels. Everything goes faster, and connections throughout the world are greater and greater. And so Interpol has also expanded its activities, and we are not just an information exchange hub anymore. We are also an innovation hub for police organizations. We have also different activities that I will be presenting in this next few minutes. We are a small group, so don't hesitate to ask questions at any time. I'll be happy to answer. If I speak too fast, let me know. Okay, it's important that we exchange. I'm here to have a discussion with you, not just to present slides. Okay. So we are a global structure uh, composed of one headquarter, which is based in Lyon. That's where I work, where most of our core activities are taking place. And then we have regional bureaus and substructures throughout the world. We have a command and control center, which is located in Lyon and duplicated in Buenos Aires and Singapore, that allows us to follow 24/7, so through 8-hour shifts, what's happening in the world, make sure that cases that are open are followed up throughout. And we are connecting all those different bureaus as well. We have liaison offices in most of the international organizations like European Union, African Union, UN. So we are also part of strategic discussions, and it makes it easier for us to exchange information with those specific organizations. In Singapore, yeah, I think, sorry, there is a problem with the pointer. In Singapore, we also have our global complex for innovation. That's where our cyber crime division is located, but that's also where we develop technologies. Sorry, it was off. It was off. Thank you. And yeah, where we are developing new technologies for police services. So under this umbrella, so our regional bureaus are also in charge of coordinating activities in different regions. There are more regional bureaus in Africa than in other regions, simply because we have a lot more activities taking place there. And these bureaus and our activities are connecting 196 member countries across the world through a secure network, which is called I-24/7. It allows all those countries to exchange police data through a secure network. And we are collecting and analyzing those data, which the countries keep the ownership of. So Interpol is not the owner of those data that are shared by the member countries. The member countries decide what is the information they want to share, with whom they want to share it as well, to some extent. And not everyone within Interpol has access to it. So there are different access levels. But this information is shared through a secured network. And so there is exchange of police data in real time at 24/7 through our national central bureaus, which are located in each country. So it's mandatory when a country becomes member of Interpol that they open a national central bureau, which is most of the time under the Ministry of Interior or equivalent in the country, and which is staffed by national staff. The other structures that we have seen before are Interpol staff. These ones are national staff, and they are our direct point of contact in the country. And they are, in addition to the sharing of information and receiving information from us. They are also coordinating activities within the country related to Interpol. So Interpol activities are centered around 4 global programs: cybercrime, counterterrorism, organized and emerging crime, and the quite new one, financial crime and anti-corruption, which was before under organized and emerging crime, but that has become a full program 2 years ago because of many, because of the priority it became, and also the mini links that exist between counterterrorism, terrorism and financial crime, as well as cyber. So it became an entity in itself. But there are links between all those programs, of course, because of the nexus of criminal activities. So although there are 4 different programs, we are all collaborating with each other because, there is no counterterrorism without financing terrorism. Part of terrorism go through cyber means or tools. Counterterrorism is often linked to criminal organizations in some ways. So we can't function without one another, but we have specific focuses in our programs. And the bioterrorism prevention units that I belong to falls under the counterterrorism part. So in the counterterrorism subdirectorate, counterterrorism directorate, we have 3 different subdirectorates. One is for counterterrorism operation, one on counterterrorism capabilities. So really building capacity to combat conventional terrorism in the countries, and to enable countries to better prevent and prepare for and respond to conventional terrorism. Our subdirectorate focuses on chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear threats, and threats to vulnerable targets, which in our jargon means critical infrastructures. And in that directorate, our mission is to support law enforcement globally in addressing CBRN threats and incidents. I won't go into our key objectives, but to do that, we are using the same capabilities that are being developed throughout our organizations, and but we have specific partners, and some of them you will recognize. Some of them are maybe a little less obvious, but we are working with partners at international level as well as national level. That's just some examples. And with them, we develop and implement activities and coordinate operations and information exchange and information sharing to enable our countries to better prepare and respond to biological incidents in the case of bio, but also to all other CBRN threats. So in our team, our mandate is to support Interpol's global law enforcement community through an interagency approach. And that's what I was saying. We are not working just with law enforcement, although they are our main stakeholder. To execute duties that are related to the prevention, preparedness, and response to bio incidents, in particular, the misuse, of biological agents by non-state actors. Why I'm saying that is that Interpol's Interpol doesn't have, well, Interpol's is not allowed to intervene in any military conflict. It's Article 3 prevents in the Constitution of Interpol, forbids it to intervene in any military or state actions, state conflict. So it's important for all our members to remember, and for us also when we work to assess if there is involvement of state parties, because then we have to get out of any investigation. So that's so in this morning, I won't be talking about any state actors related incidents, and because it's not part of our mandate and it's not part of what we do. So when I say biological, well, I say in this slide it says biological incidents. It doesn't say bioterrorism. Do you know why we see biological incidents? Do you have an idea?
After COVID.
So it started before COVID, but COVID was was a big wake up call for many police agencies. But even before COVID, we were also focusing on biological incidents rather than bioterrorism, because in most cases, and we'll see it this morning, unless you have a clear statement from a terrorist group saying, we've done something bad with a biological agent, you actually don't know. You actually don't know if you are facing an accident, a natural outbreak, or something deliberate. And if it's deliberate, you don't know if it's criminal or terrorist. So that's why we are looking at biological incidents as a whole and not just bioterrorism. So contrary to most of our sister units, as we call them, the chemical and explosive units and the radiological and nuclear units, which are focusing on terrorism, use of radiological and nuclear material, or chemical and explosives, we have a much broader scope, because at the initial stage, we cannot be sure what is the nature.
Are we sure now about the COVID-19 origin?
No, and we probably won't know. I mean, it's well, we can probably rule out 98% that it's not deliberate. We can probably rule out that 67% it's not accidental, but we'll never know for sure.
The real truth.
Exactly. That's yeah. Without, I mean, and the more time passes and the more complicated it's going to be to know exactly what happened there. So that's one of the particularities of our units. So we have a set of objectives that I won't go into detail, but they cover 4 areas of work that I will explain a little bit more in the next slide, and that are designed around our global biosecurity and enhancement program. So for this program, which is similar to what is implemented in our sister units in Chem Bio and Chem Radnuk, we are So we are supporting our member countries' investigations, but through all those different pillars. So criminal analysis, innovation, fugitive investigative support, police data management, forensic support, capacity building and training, command and coordination, and special projects. So in our team, we are mostly doing criminal analysis and police data management, capacity building and training, and we are using a little bit of the command and coordination center. And I'll explain how we do that. So I was saying Interpol was created to exchange information and not jump from buildings like we see in movies. And that's really the core of our work. So we have 19 databases where we centralize police information. And those databases are used every day by member countries to look for people, to look for vehicles, to match, to look for DNA and fingerprint matches in their investigations, look for people who are missing, fugitives, stolen vehicles or items. We have work of arts, but we also have DNA databases to link cases between countries, and it's so it's a very efficient mechanism for countries to identify perpetrators or get additional information on suspects. And those databases have very strict rules on what kind of information can be entered in those databases, how and who can access, how it can be accessed and who can access them, what is the retention of it. We have a big legal team who reviews everything that goes into it. And that's make sure that the data that goes into it is that if the data that is submitted in those databases is actually following the rules that were set for each of those databases. For example, we have DNA profiles for people who are for criminals that have been convicted. We also have a separate database for family DNA for people who have been missing, and those are two different databases, and one cannot be used. We cannot use the family DNA to look for criminals. That's so it's very strict on the way we are using those two databases, and it's supposedly the same as national level. Privacy, yeah, exactly. You can't be
I
Yes.
don't remember about the actual situation of the database.
Yes, the databases are available. Some of them are available directly for the police at national level. Some databases are only some databases are only accessible from headquarters to our analysts, and the country has to submit a request, and we do the search for them and come back saying there is a match, there is no match, and here's the results. That's so it really depends on the database.
Every counterfeit database also the Italy, for example, do feed the DNA profiles
Yes.
of criminals.
So not all countries do, but so each database has a membership. So it's not because you are an Interpol member that you are a member of the database. So all our databases have different number of members, depending on priorities in the countries, depending on the interest, also resources. We have, I was showing the 196 national central bureaus in the countries. In some countries, you have 200 people in that bureau. In some countries, you have 3 people. And so yeah. So it's the level of involvement is not the same, and the ability to share is not the same. So countries are prioritizing.
And also, last one we can check maybe the CBRNE incidents around.
No. We don't. Those are not available. I'll talk about so there is no open source on CBRNE incidents. So those are our 3 CBRNE databases. So Geiger for Radnik, Watchmaker for explosives mostly, and BioTracker for bioincidents. BioTracker was launched last year. It's very new. Geiger and Watchmaker are a lot more a lot older. So Geiger and Watchmaker and BioTracker are accessible by national focal points for those databases. They are all the 3 of them are very different in the way they've been built. Geiger's been built in, I would say, in parallel maybe of the IEA incident database, but it contains information about perpetrators and modus operandi that are not available in the IEA database, for example. Watchmaker, the advantage of our databases is that they contain this information. And that's why we can't make those available to just anyone.
But there are, I think, some reports about some incidents.
So we do publish reports. Analytical products based on those databases. Those have a wider audience, of course, and the level of confidentiality or sensitivity will make the level of access different. That's what it is. BioTracker, I'll talk about it a little bit more. So because it's the latest, we also have additional, and because also it's different, it's not just about bioterrorism, it's all about bioincidents. So it has also visual interface to see where incidents are happening and to filter through what are the different types of incidents, what are the different agents involved as well. And it's made available, so the point of contact are not necessarily within law enforcement. That's the difference between BioTracker and the 2 other databases. But it's decided at national level. We are not the one deciding who has access. It's the government and the national authorities who are deciding who they are going to nominate as their point of contact.
Does that collab with the WHO?
No, not at all. So we are not So it's not in collaboration with WHO. However, we are ingesting some of the data from WHO, from the World Organization for Animal Health. We are also, and that's a difference compared to Geiger and Watchmaker, is that we are allowed and able to ingest open source information. So we can have additional contextual information than that Geiger and Watchmaker don't have. Any more questions on databases? And so we can, if we have information and we encourage our member countries to feed those databases. Right now, BioTracker has 137 members. Feed those the database with additional information that's not open source, so that we can see what are the different links between incidents and being able to produce reports that are more substantial and more relevant for the rest of our members. Okay, so one of the products that come out of those of the analysis of those documents and the information that is fed to our databases are Interpol notices. So Interpol notices were one of the first tool that was established by Interpol, and probably the one that you might know is the red notice, which allows which some of them are public, are allowed to. It's for wanted persons, and it's almost the equivalent of an international arrest warrant. It allows countries to detain a person for extradition back to the countries where they are wanted. That's so it's a powerful tool, but we have different colors depending on the type of action that is required, and the information that is contained in the notice. Yellow is for missing persons. Blue notices are used a lot during ongoing investigations, because they allow to collect additional information about a person, even if there is no legal court decision made. For a red notice to be published, the person has to have a court decision against them. For a blue notice, we don't need a court decision. It's if there is an investigation ongoing, there is the police can ask for additional, in one country can ask for additional information about a person who could be involved in a criminal or terrorist activity. Black notice is for unidentified bodies. So green notices are for warning and intelligence. So it's to request additional information, usually about someone who's been already convicted and released, but still poses a risk to society. So it's usually, well, we use it a lot in terrorism cases, in pedophilia cases as well. That's orange notices are used for imminent threats. So we use it a lot in bio, for example, or in RADNUC. So in RADNUC, when a source has been stolen or has disappeared, if there is a risk that it goes, that it passes the border, we'll publish an orange notice to warn the neighboring countries that there is a possibility that a radioactive source is going to enter the country. In bio, if there is a disease, a major serious disease outbreaks that starts in one country, we want to tell the neighboring countries or the countries at risk that's it's ongoing. We did it for COVID-19 in January 2020, before it was declared as a public health of international concern. We did it for Ebola a couple of times for the neighboring countries. But we also, yeah, so it's a very useful tool in CBRNE. Purple notices are for new modus operandi, and that's also something we use a lot. That's allows us, so once we have identified a new modus operandi, so we work with the country who has identified it to get all the information laid out in a structured manner with pictures, explanations, and we send them to all our member countries, to all our NCBs, hoping that they are going to relay the information to all the stakeholders, not just the police, who should be aware of those modus operandi, so that they can detect and prevent the use or the misuse of CBRNE material and equipment. I'll take the example. We published our first purple notice during COVID. Was about someone selling kits on the internet for contaminating people with COVID. That's so homemade kits to contaminate people with COVID. So, I mean, the how do you say it? The method would not have been very successful, but just the fact that some people were willing to do it, and that's in some cases there was still a risk, was for us enough of an issue that we assessed that it would require a purple notice to warn countries of that possibility, and for them to monitor what was happening on the net, on the web, and try to stop and discourage people from doing that. That's and then we have the UN's Interpol UN Security Council special notices, which are something quite different, but they are for groups and individuals subject to UN Security Council sanctions. And so we are publishing some every year. And it's to block mostly the assets of those groups. We are in the process of creating two new notices, which is the silver one, which is related to financial crime, and the brown one, which is related to environmental crimes, but they are not finalized yet, so they are not on this slide. Does that make sense for all of you? So in CBRNE, we mostly use orange, green, purple, and blue. That's our main ones. So all that is used to connect those police services, but also others. We also work with customs a lot. Some of those databases are also accessible to custom people. When you've seen at the airport as well, that's some of when you get your passport scan, it goes through our databases, see if there are stolen documents, see if you're one of the people that has a notice against them. So I was saying BioTracker is one of our main tool for police data and criminal analysis. When it comes to training and operational support to member countries, so it's a big part of the work that we do. And for that, we've developed in the bio team, but also in the other CBRN units, we've developed a very large range of training activities that we implement in countries based on needs assessment to make sure that we tailor to the needs to make sure that we are meeting that we are filling gaps and that we are meeting the needs and not just going there to tick a box. And so our capacity building and training activities, they go from they cover prevention. So there are two examples. We have one of our workshops is on dual use materials, and they're for law enforcement and border police. So what are they? It's an introductory course. What are they? How they are linked to the threats of bioterrorism and biocrime. Pandora is a training course on the darknet investigation for the trade of bio and chem items, misuse of investigating bioterrorism activities on the darknet. So we have very various activities, very different, for which we use a different type of expertise. I'm a microbiologist, but in our team, which is very small, we have all different backgrounds, so that we complement each other. And we use external experts in support as well, in the development and the implementation of the activities. Preparedness, same thing. We do a lot of various activities, whether it's strategic, at the strategic, tactical, or operational level. In response, we do trainings, but we do also operational exercises. When I say operational exercises, is that we also use our Interpol tools and involve. So we not only place our trainees in a bio incident type of context or environments, but we also look at using our policing capabilities and how they integrate into that response. And we try to identify at the same time what is coming in the country, identify if there is any smuggling, if there are any CBRN material or CBRN terrorist-related activities ongoing. Also, we usually do border operations in that context, involving one or several countries. We also do crime scene management, crime scene investigations training. We have also all sets of resources that are available online through our virtual academy. Manual guidelines, videos, e-learning modules. Something's missing. SPOC, small private online course on law enforcement preparedness and response to biological outbreaks. Sorry, to disease outbreaks. But we have developed over the years lots of resources for countries because that's been in our area, in CBRNE, bio has been an area that's been put aside for for a long time because it was. So some of them are available. I can share links with you as long as you are not well, you're keeping it for yourself. Some of the training videos, some of these guidelines and e-learnings. Any of you can contact your National Central Bureau. It's something you can do, and I can put you in contact with them to request access to it.
Okay.
That's something you can do. I mean, I can't vouch for you, but if they think it's okay for you to have access, then that's fine. But the training videos, definitely, I can share the link with Andrea Malizia, and you can have access to them. We are almost at the end of this presentation. You can have a break after that. Yes. And then, so the last thing we do is operational support. So in case of an incident, CBRN incident, we have the possibility as part of the incident response teams that are available at Interpol to actually provide support to our member countries, remote or on-site support for this particular incident. We either receive a request directly from the member country, or we offer that support to the country who has an incident, and we decide together what is needed from them, and we can deploy or we can offer that support remotely. That includes many types of support. It can be investigative support. I have colleagues who have been deployed on post-blast investigations, for example. For us in bio, we've been deployed for just-in-time training on Ebola response for law enforcement. But very often we do on remote support for investigations of incidents. That's currently that's what we are the most requested to do. That's and I think that's the last slide. So I hope that's been informative. Do you have any questions? Additional questions? Okay, well, thank you for your attention. And break. I think welcome break for everyone. Have like a 10-minute break.
Because. You're right on size, incredible. Yeah, no, it's case. Oh, yeah.
Resonates guidelines of the manuals.
Yes.
So how do I contact the national bureau to access?
I will like get you the information. Which
United Arab Emirates.
yes, it's but which agency are you from? Even. Super easy.
That is, yeah.
Just if you can give me an email. I'll give you the right card though. I have it in French, but I should have it in English somewhere. The email address is not going to change. That's for sure. It's better if I give you my card in English.
Okay. You have.
Oh, you have French ones? Someone.
And the second thing, you can also
I'll take it in front.
Let me see if I can find one in French, in English. And I only have. But yeah, send me an email and I'll put you in contact with you.
Yeah. The manual also you have for chemical or only for the oil?
Yeah.
So we also have for chem. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if I contact the national.
The National Bureau will tell you for chem as well. No, they will tell for you everything. Yeah, you'll ask for both, for whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then you tell me what you can have access to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Different length are not available.
Okay, and if you want, maybe if you want to have a coffee or something, you can go to the customer and.
I should check because I probably is the standard. So usually, normally, when I have this problem with they
They bend it a little bit.
Yeah.
But for me, my ear somewhere like here.
right. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so really, you're right. You
Yeah.
need more long.
Yeah.
But by me, probably is quite a common problem. So
Yeah, I guess.
maybe, yeah. So have you ever find the alright one with?
Yeah, because the one I've got 3 radians and I saw another one, but there was one that was a Ferrari.
Okay.
I've these and these are a bit bent,
Longer.
Yeah, but they're long enough.
Ok. Ciao, bene, molto bene. I guess such a short time, probably this technology will be
Yeah,
available in almost in everything.
I can see it in all the metro stations now. There's this commercial for the radian meta.
Imagine that a ball transmission
Yeah,
at the end no require the video camera.
no,
So
it's bizarre.
probably in a very short time we will be overwhelmed by AI technology.
Yeah, probably.
So a couple of phone calls.
ساعات بيقول والله انا المكان ساعات بيقول انا البحر زي ما يجي هذا شيء واحد بيقول لي انا دايركم الثيران لازم انا قلت لي يوسف ترى طرشونا 100 اسبوع و40 هذول اللي كان 6 شهور قلت له الحين تراكم ترموز تنزلون لنا في الشهر بيومين قال لي بكمل ان شاء الله واصلا انا ناوي اسيب مني في نفسي بصير انا مو ما يقدر يتدرب مش طيارات ساعة الليل انا بس اشوف بحاول اخذ راسين احاول اخذ راسي ليش اليوم ما الدكتور صار يجيب عن الثانية استخدموا مثلا برز بناكم 3 ليش؟ بس لا ان شاء الله. اقول لك هاي راعية الشقة اللي عندنا البارحة يا اسطراوية في انجليين ويسولف سنين مع مسنها ما ادري شو. وانها تعرف دوم تحاوطنا هي ما تفوت ترى عندها ما شاء الله تعرف بشقة ثلاث فتحت وقتت وثنتين تحت تعرفهم مسكينة يا رجال اعطيتها سكت يا رجال يمنا مو لا ببدل انا تمام اعطيتها سكت تتخبى ما ادري انا اعطيته وتضحك يمنا شي وتراويني عيالها وحالتها هذيل يوم شوي تراويني البارحة قالت انا اسال الجمعه انك تكلمني السيف قال لي هذا فضل 3 ايام تحت وانا مش متواعد وياها. قلت له انت شو تبغى انت الحين؟ قال والله بكلم هي ترى عندها شقتين وين بالدوم وين بالطاوله. راوتني قلت لها بس ما والله وين بالدوم وبتجيب بالمطبخ وبسكت. بس شو المشكله؟ في سعرها طيب ترى في البيت. بس يا اخي لو انك لو شوي بنايه فرق عليك. والله لو ليه تفضلي؟ ربنا يصاب والبدون نشترى يصلصون هذه يكون بعدين ما وايد ما يعني ما تراهم يصير بنيان المنطقة عليها سكينة ما ضبط تقريبا من ضبط تقريبا السنة الجاية انت بيكون ضمان مثل الشباب انت معامل اسبوعين وطلب لا عشان تسأل الناس اسبوع لا طب انت بين السنة الجاية انت تاخذها السنة الجاية في يوم بالسنة يمكن ما انت اسبوعين هي النسبة مش شرط هي خلاص هي معاملة إن شاء الله لا 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 والله الخير يسمع الله يا ربي يعطيك يا رب مش تفضل تفتح من الدعم قال قال كيف الموضوع لو بس يكون مع Yes.
Sì, non una parola, quella è l'anno, ma non so se hai.
يلا تيجي تهوى احلى من اللي تحت.
اه المستشفى.
لا طب المستشفى لا البكتيريا اللي تحت هي احلى. ها
هاي عرفت.
فين؟
No, perché a me non fa come il consolato mi fa con la spirito che mai quindi non abbiamo se
هي نور والضرور والمدى الممنوع الدوري بس في اللحم بتاعي المركب طيار بالطريقه فيك ما صرت
Time to go downstairs.
Yes. Where are you from?
I don't know.
Where in the Netherlands?
It's funny, I guess about 2 years ago, I got in touch with Interpol and I succeeded in making this. I was wondering, well, it struck me that in the Netherlands, things are not really good arranged when it comes to super incident. At least if it's the ministry that we have a specialized team, the national front office team, so
Yes.
we can.
Colomba, ci sei?
We can
No,
no, but because our national defense institute, they run extra phases that are in a contaminated area. So there is this gentleman's agreement between our national defense institute and our the national everything with Dutch and also with TNO, so it's just the
exactly.
but nothing is really put on paper or whatever. It's like, yeah, if it happens, then we will sort it out. Yeah. Right. So I was wondering if there were other countries in Europe
That have something better?
yeah, better is
Yeah, well, so that's funny that you're talking about it because we invited your National Forensic Institute in February to help us design a workshop for our countries. We don't have this structure. You read
because he was the senior program manager.
Forrest was not invited part. So we invited her to some together a workshop for countries who haven't started the process yet. How come together and how it's handled. Because yes, we've been training countries by managing crisis, but then what do you do next?
Yeah.
That's it.
And I understood because I was in this Sense course about 2 years ago with regard to red, and I spoke to this guy from Algeria.
Yeah.
And apparently they've got it sorted out everything because they're the journalistic investigation, but they also have their own where you can also do the real classical forensic investigation. At least that's what I understood.
Yeah, well, not for the bio. Not for the bio conference, from Dubai yet, but they do run in Canada.
Yeah. Well, then
That's already.
they are doing a lot better than
That's already something. Exactly. But so that's what we are working, and we implemented our first workshop with Tunisia. So they started identifying what is it that they can do in the field, forensic that they can do in contaminated crime. What is it that they can do with which partner labs? What is it that they cannot do? And what they need to build capacity and build partnership with. That's sort of things, and they are now putting it on paper. But yeah, there are many countries that don't have that. In France, we have what we call our it's Piratox Pirato laboratory network, and it's very well structured. It was started in 2002, I think so, and 2003. The idea started in 2002, and I think last year was their 20th anniversary. And so they have a network, and it says, okay, that's the first lab where it goes for
It's
us.
the same network, we call it the National Network for Terror Attacks, National Laboratory Network for Terror Attacks. But then we call it the National Institute of Health. And they're looking, so you need to go to TNO, it's bio, we can do it. Yeah, but you can only profile, you cannot really investigate it. That is the,
goes through.
Yeah.
There's easily identify who can do this. And what type of examination can do in which lab, and with which lab. That's a lot of it goes in France, a lot of it goes for.
That's great, but that was also something I was thinking about.
Yeah, that's not this way. This one. Okay. Ready to start again? No. No? You want to finish at 2:00? Okay, so we've talked about Interpol. Now we are going to talk about agroterrorism. So who knows about agroterrorism here? Who's heard about agroterrorism? Agroterrorism rings a bell. Anyone?
Great crop.
Not just crops, it's also livestock. But for us, it's anything that touches animal and plants, pretty much. So we'll have a little bit of an introduction now, and on the challenges and the prevention of and preparedness and response to agroterrorism. Why Interpol is interested in agroterrorism? Because almost 80% of the agents that has potential for terrorist use are actually zoonotic pathogens. So they can be used against, they can be used against animals and humans. And any attacks on humans will have also an impact potentially on animals. So for us, it was important to have also this approach that it's not just about responding to when we respond to a bioterrorism and when we prepare for bioterrorism incidents, we most likely have to also think about the animal and environmental consequences. Plus, in many countries now, it becomes also a concern that crops, livestock could be targeted or could be victims of biological agents through different means. So I'll talk about the risk of agroterrorism in this presentation, and we'll discuss what and why it is challenging. It is a challenging field for everyone. So this is Interpol's updated list of biological agents and toxins of concerns for animal and human populations. As I said, so it was updated last year. As I said, so we don't have a separate list for humans. If you look at it, human-only diseases on this list are one here and one there. Okay, and one of them is eradicated. So that's a very, very limited list of disease that are of concerns from a law enforcement perspective. So this list is not a list of bioterrorist agents. There are agents that could pose a concern for law enforcement that will require most likely law enforcement intervention. As you can see, there are a bunch of viruses, some bacteria. Prions are here, although they are not a concern, an everyday concern, but they are here because of the panic they could create, mostly. And then we have a bunch of toxins. Toxins have a very broad host range. And so all of these can be used against animals and humans. Things that we were not looking at until a few years ago are aquatic animal diseases. How do you prepare for attacks against aquaculture? Aquaculture and fish products seafood products have become more and more important in economies, and they are very, very easy to spread diseases to. And some of those diseases that we see in aquatic animals can be transferred to humans. So they can be both the target, but also a way of vectorizing a disease into human populations. So that's one of the reasons. I mean, that explains why we have also developed awareness and developing material and partnerships to tackle agroterrorism. So we've worked for several years with the World Organization for Animal Health and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the Ewann, and discussed what are the risks linked to the spread of diseases from in animal populations linked to criminal and terrorist activities. And we came up with a definition for agrocrime, which is any offense impacting animals and crops, the inputs used to release them or their products, that is classified as a crime as per country's civil and penal codes. And one subset of this is agroterrorism, and it's a intentional release of biological agents or toxins for the purpose of harming or killing animals or plants with the intent to intimidate or coerce governments or civilian population to further political or social objectives. So when we look at this definition of agrocrime, that's a very broad definition. And we understand that there are many ways of actually harming animal populations through the use of diseases, intentionally or unintentionally. I'll take one example, a recent one. In April this year, Hungary has seen its first outbreak of a foot and mouth disease in 50 years. 50 years without the disease being present. So far, it's cost them 50 million euros of disease control measures. They have no clue how it came in the country. What they know, it's not natural. All the surrounding countries don't have it. The strain that is linked to it is not from the region. So how it came, probably from non-compliance, maybe, well, there are police investigation ongoing to understand what is the source of the contamination, but it could be linked to criminal activities. So, and it's costing a lot of money. It's created lots of issues in the country for the past 2 months. They were unable to. They were banned from trading meat, pork, beef with other countries. They lost their status of foot and mouth disease-free country. So, and they will take time for them to regain that. And as long as they don't have it, they can't export the meat. So it has huge consequences at the economical level. And just because if someone has either done it on purpose or accidentally brought it in, maybe because they were smuggling animals, when it's one possibility. So it's so related to criminal activity, although it was not intended to bring the disease in, or maybe they knew that the animals were diseased, but they didn't care. And in the end, it brings that disease in the country. And there was a whole European-wide response to that outbreak in Hungary. I think Netherlands were the first one to bring to provide vaccines to the region.
Times.
Yeah, exactly. That's so this can have huge consequences. So if it's done not on purpose, but when it's done on purpose, it can be even worse. So in animals, what can spread diseases? Well, falsified products, animal cruelty. We don't really think about it, but most of those animals that are victims of cruelty are usually kept in bad conditions. They are sometimes being smuggled or victims of smuggling or how do you call it? Illegal trade. You have deliberate release, criminal or terrorist deliberate release, food fraud, non-compliance, smuggling, illicit wildlife use, livestock rustling and theft. Something that we see a lot in some countries in Africa, in South America, where people are stealing cattle from one side of the border, bringing it to the other side and bringing diseases with it. In plants, it can be deliberate release, non-compliance, smuggling, but also illicit logging and trading of plants. An example of agrocrime in plants, a few years back, 4 years ago, there was this huge there was a huge scare because people were receiving randomly seeds from China.
No instructions.
No instructions, no idea what the seeds were from, what they were. That's and they were so initially. So some people threw them in the bin. Where do they end up? And seeds are one way of transmitting diseases. In plants, the viruses, pathogens can stay inside the seed and transmit the disease through. So that's so that's one way of transmitting diseases is through seeds. So it was a huge scare. The disease, well, the disease, there was no disease associated, fortunately, but you never know. That's
And what type of seed then?
so they were random plants. I mean, they were not all the same. Plus, they were just random plants from China. That's and the other thing is that on the packages here, for customs, it says that they were jewelry being sent
Yeah.
as a gift.
Was randomly sent, so.
It was randomly sent to, so they were, so in the end, so there were several investigations started because those seeds were sent to several people in several countries, in the US, in UK, in Japan, in France, in Belgium. We found that they were sent for marketing purposes. So there were people who had bought from some places, and then they were sent those for marketing purposes. Saying, if you receive those seeds, please don't plant them, don't throw them away, because we there is a risk of either bringing in a disease or having some sort of a aliens invasive species taking roots in our country. That's but it was done for marketing purpose. But you could imagine someone having the same idea, saying, "I'm going to send those infected," and that's very simple. Huh? All it takes is getting a bag of contaminated seeds, putting them in the mail. Not contagious for me. I'm safe. As a criminal, I don't have any risk of being infected. That's the other advantage of this kind of crime. It's just you are not taking a risk. You are not putting your health at risk. That's so that's the one. Another example, more striking but older, as the foot and mouth disease in the UK in 2001, which was a disaster. I don't know, well, some of you were not born at that time, maybe, but I was. I went to the UK at that time, and I remember entering the UK and having to step into those tray full of decontaminating solution because of that of the outbreak, and it had a really major impact. The picture here is depicting burning carcasses of cows. That's they had to kill millions of animals, and when they traced that, when they investigated this how do you say, the introduction of foot and mouth disease in the country, it was linked to animal feed that was contaminated. And the person who actually introduced it knew it was contaminated, but didn't care. That's so brought it to a farm. And then, because foot and mouth disease is a virus that spreads very easily, that's very resistant in the environment, it contaminated many farms. And the preventive measure for foot and mouth disease is you kill all the cows and pigs within the area, whether they are infected or not. You kill everything to control the spread. So millions of cows were killed thousands of people lost their livelihood. Veterinarians were traumatized because they were the one doing the killing. And it has a huge social, psychological impact on people. I mean, seeing those images, it was just terrible, but it was also very hard on many people. And economically, it was a disaster. So you see just the impacts you can have, and for terrorist groups, attacking economy is sometimes more valuable than attacking people. It has also a different impact, a different sorry?
Mindset.
Exactly, different mindsets, and it's also a different perspective for the populations. So although it's not well, it is agro-terrorism not using biological agents is being used currently in several areas controlled by terrorists to subdue population against destroying crops, stealing or destroying livestock. That's just as a mean of keeping their hold on populations. So that is not very far from it. It's just a different way of doing agro-terrorism. Sorry. And so another, so those were any agro crimes. This now is agro-terrorism. The first reported case of agro-terrorism was Mau Mau insurgents in Kenya in 1952. Why it is interesting? I mean, it's so in the 50s, the Mau Mau in Kenya wanted independence from the British Crown and the British settlers. And so one of the way they rebel against it was to use these plants that's poisonous to poison the cattle of the farmers, the British farmers. They only poisoned 33. They only killed 33 of the cows with that plant, but it still had an impact. They didn't get their independence, but it still had a big psychological impact on the farmers. We thought that they were not that safe, and that this kind of, I mean, they were surprised by the attack, and that's the fact that they were attacking also their livelihood was actually something that's where they were not expecting. So it was a new form of a new form of attack for them, and it destabilized the colonies at the time.
That was it organized by the government?
The settling or no, it was by this group of rebels. That's just
Rebels.
Yes.
Made
Exactly. That's of the settlers. They wanted them gone from their land, and that's so yeah, it was the reverse. It's just yeah. So it's the first recorded case of agro-tourism. That's another example for me. It's the what do you say? It's supposed agrotourism. It's not been confirmed, but for me, it's one of the best example. So it's plant agrotourism, and so it occurred in the end of the at the beginning of the 1990s, but actually the first outbreak occurred in 1989. So Southern Bahia was the biggest producer region producing cocoa in Brazil. And Brazil in the 1980s was a cocoa exporter. I mean, was the third cocoa exporter country. No, they are no more. That's because of the introduction of this fungus that was found only 2,000 kilometers away from this area. Because of the introduction of this mushroom, it's a little fungus that is called, that causes that witch broom disease. Brazil became an exporter of cacao within 7 years. Just it completely destroyed their production of cocoa.
I think it's very common in Brazil to have cocoa everywhere.
Cacao, that's
Cocoa.
cocoa. Yeah. So they were.
The other stuff is cocoa.
Okay, cacao. That's yeah, cocoa. So they were the third exporter. In less than 10 years, they became importer. And nowadays, Brazil still imports cocoa. They've never been able to regrow in that region properly cocoa. That's yeah, exactly. So they knew it was deliberate because in the first and second outbreak that were a few months apart, the farmers, they found on their trees, they found little twigs with those fungus tied to the branches. So they knew that was not natural. They don't come and tie themselves to the tree. No, it doesn't happen like that.
Who was the attack?
So for 17 years, they didn't know what happened, who did it. There was an investigation from the police, the federal Brazilian police said it's deliberate, but we don't know who did it. There is no proof of who did it. And 17 years later, someone, from this left-wing militant actually went to have an interview with the magazine. It said, I, with 5 other people, we did it.
Wow. So not the competitors.
No.
To act.
So exactly, the first hypothesis were maybe that's another country that is competitor with us and wants us out of the picture. And so they were looking to that direction. No, that didn't happen. And so this guy, he said, we did it because we wanted, so in that region, there was, the whole region was under the control of those cocoa producers.
So
They were controlling everything, politics, the land, the education, everything was under their control, and they were right wings. And so those guys, they are claiming that they wanted this to change. They wanted land distribution to change and everything. And that's why they brought the fungus there. And area. Yeah, exactly. For me, if that's what they were trying to achieve, they achieved it. Huh? They did it. So that's guy.
Maybe someone gave them the idea.
What is interesting also in that story is that this guy was claiming that he did it, actually worked for the Ministry of Agriculture and worked on that fungus. He said he was working on looking for ways of managing the disease and on plants that were resistant to the disease. So he had access to it. He knew how it worked. Maybe he didn't realize that the impact would be as bad, that they could not recover after so many years. Because as I was saying, nowadays they're still not growing properly cocoa in the region. So you see, that's you can achieve a lot with not much if you know what you're doing. So for me, if it's really what they were trying to do, I think it's one of the most successful agrotourism attack in history.
Thinking about the oil in Italy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah. But in some case, so you can create havoc, bringing a disease into your country, but you can create a lot of issues and a lot of problems for for the people responding just with a hoax by pretending that you are bringing a disease into the country. And those are two examples that have occurred in 2000 and something. 2000, between 2001 and 2008. So in South Africa and in New Zealand, pretending that you are going to spread a disease into a country that has heavy reliance on livestock or crop production will have also a huge impact. In the case of this, well, in the South African case, so there was an investigation that involved UK, South Africa, and the US, because this guy, well, this guy is not on the picture, but the South African guy, he was threatening to spread foot and mouth disease, and we've seen can create a mess, economic mess into the US and the UK if they didn't pay a compensation to Zimbabwe and to so money in to Zimbabwe and to South Africa, but through him. As a repair, I mean, as a compensation for the whites, the white population taking over the land, blah blah blah. The guy was white, who made the threats, but he did it all that anonymously through the use of internet cafe. There was month-long investigation involving those three countries. Finally, they caught the guy in South Africa after monitoring several internet cafes. They traced him back and they caught him when they were setting up the ransom a pickup. That's how they found out that he didn't have the foot and mouth virus. They didn't have access to it, but they couldn't take the risk. So it's employed a lot of resources from in many different ways to make sure that there were no risk associated with this guy. Operation Wahiki in New Zealand was smaller scale, but New Zealand relies heavily also on meat exportation and milk and dairy products exportation. And same thing, so this guy was tried for terrorism. In Operation Waiki, so big reliance of the economy on their livestock, and so same thing. Well, no, not same thing. In this case, they actually told the government that they had already released the disease in the island close to the capital city. So they had to deploy veterinarians and the response teams to the island to look for the disease, and then make also investigations, criminal investigations, as well as epidemiological investigation to see if it was true, if who was involved and everything. In this case, they didn't find the culprit, but there was no virus involved. But again, still involving a lot of resources, and for some of those threats that are credible, you can't just ignore them. You still have to investigate them. And they are not so easy to investigate. So another challenge. Questions, comments? Okay. So I've talked a little bit about some of the advantages of agrotourism, but I'll summarize them here. So agriculture is already a target, as I was saying, for terrorism. The biological agents for agrotourism are easy to source. Any outbreak of disease is basically a source of biological agents, and often they are less dangerous to handle for someone who has less experience, especially if they are not zoonotic diseases in case of animals. But plants, I'm not exposing myself when I go harvest a plant bioagents. The duration of the attack, incubation, silent spread, especially in case of a plant disease. When I was talking about the seeds, you can't see that a seed is contaminated by eye. So, well, you might see symptoms on a grown plant, on a live animal, on a seed. You can only detect it if you are looking for it. Okay, so you can have those seeds sent and planted way before anything happened, and then you don't have a crime scene anymore when you start investigating, like it happened for Brazil. It's just you don't know. I mean, even if you've seen the tweets, it's just there is not much concrete to investigate. It's hard to distinguish from a natural occurrence, and the economic impacts, food insecurity and loss of livelihood can be a very potent factor for the terrorist potential or terrorist impact in itself. And it can create confusion, loss of trust in government institutions if those incidents are not managed quickly and efficiently by the government. So those are reasons why terrorists are still interested in agrotourism. The consequences, we've talked a bit about it. So can have consequences on human health, livelihoods, animal health and welfare, biodiversity, and economies. The big being economies. All those, I'm focusing this part of the talk on agrotourism, but it's valid for any type of biotourism. Innovation in technologies is really impacting biotourism, the biotourism threats. Technologies are advancing exponentially in all fields. Just like we went from a bartering to cryptocurrency. Yeah. Here, biotechnology is evolving at exponential rates and including more and more other technologies. So we are not just focusing now on bio, but on any type of technology that can influence biological agents and equipments and biotourism. So when we are analyzing biothreats, we are not just looking at the biological agents anymore. We are looking at all different types of technologies that are developing, all the innovations that would feed that biological threats. Scientific research and developments are becoming multidisciplinary. And so to analyze any threats nowadays, being a biologist is not sufficient anymore. You have to pull in all type of disciplines to understand the exact nature and the exact impact that the threat can have. And the last point is that technical information, skills, and knowledge are more and more available. Things that I learned to do in the lab when I was a long time ago, and I was very young, that would be very difficult to do, that you needed specific material to have, that you needed to build piece by piece. Now you just order it on internet and it comes with a step-by-step instruction, and you do, I put A with B and C, and you just have it. When I was me in my lab, it was, you had an instructions like that, and you had to have all the pieces that came from different places. Now it's all one kit and you have it. So people with less technical knowledge have the capacity to do a lot more now than in the past. And so it makes the threat more accessible to many people. And unfortunately, less well-intended people. So this evolution of technology has an impact on weaponization stage, on the building of biological weapons. So on the intent, thinking about using it. There are more and more propaganda and methods of production available on the internet, being shared on WhatsApp, Telegram, and so on and so forth. Easier to acquire. The darknet is a very good source of acquisition. To produce and multiply agents, stabilize your weapon, concentrate it, and disperse it. Do you want to have a break?
Yeah.
10 minutes break before I go to the next step. Yes, yeah, it was good. Ah, you don't have it.
No, but this room has not charged. That's why.
Yeah.
So no Italian typical dishes during this day.
Unfortunately, no. No time for it. I arrived last night at midnight.
Okay, okay. You come back?
I will come back.
Okay.
I'm here at least twice a year in Rome, and then I try to come to Italy at least once a year outside of this.
Okay. So we'll see again.
Yeah.
Have you seen Malika?
Yeah, yeah. He came and picked me up where I stayed, so that's no Andrea for many years because I worked with his wife in Ispra.
Ah, okay, another project. Okay.
Yeah, well, I still worked in the European Commission with him for a year. And,
You mean Alba?
yeah.
He's very expensive, a funny girl,
Mhm.
and prepared, but she's
Yes.
like Andrea.
Yes.
So warm and it's
Exactly.
quality, nice
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah, it's very nice.
You know, it's with other colleagues, other colleagues often are they're quite Italian. Representative. Do you want the coffee?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
So I go to there.
Sure. I see you migrating. That's fine. I have no problem with that.
But I'm focused, don't worry. No, because my neck.
It's fine with me. It's Andrea who insisted.
Yeah, I know. Just for the picture. أبوك رمسته طلعت عنده من الانتربول جواب قالت عندكم في البيت واحد بيرمسني أعطيك إياه قلت أوكي حلو
عارف حد في الانتربول؟
ميتي
لا
لا مو أنت حريان
عارف واحد داوم في الانتربول وايدين يداومون هناك بس انا اعرف واحد
رئيسي هي بس قالت في واحد عندكم مهندس في البيت خلاص هي خلاص
اكثر عن واحد
قالت لا بسهوله وانا أخلص. خلاص قال لي بس ذكرني طرش اليمين العلم
انا
قالت
اعرف
الجايد لاين هذا قال في غير بطرش لك مال كم ما ادري شو كل شيء
طبيعي يداوم هناك
خلاص بس المشكله هي
راشد بلوشي ولا دافري كان في بريطانيا درس في ليفربول
امس اشوف كان لي قريب منها
بس والله شغلتهم حلوه ترى
اها
شغلتهم حلوه
في سنه
عندكم جرم
إيه.
وين دول الفلانيه كبل الطياره
ايه
خلاص ردوا لي تبغاها حاوط فيها كم يوم
طلع شوي تراويح
يا اخي دحم كذب 10 شوي ياباني شوي عربي
هنشوف
4 لغات انجليزي راسه ابداع ديانه أربع لغات أو من خمسة خمسة ما خمسة
والله احنا حرام العين. الله دراني بكره. بكره عادي شد في السيارة تلاقي العيال كل أمنيات في الباب. So, are you a part of the Interpol?
Yes. Yeah.
You from Italy?
No, I'm French. I'm French and I work in France.
I think like the main center in France.
Yes, we are in Europe. We have about
And which one in Vienna?
Vienna.
أي وحدة في Vienna?
Vienna is the IEA is in Vienna. Yes. The IEA. Then you have several UN offices there, but we are in France.
مصطفى يسموه خوي. لا هي الرئيسي.
ما الانتربول بس ما do you know شو اسمه الرئيس؟
I think he's the president of the Interpol. Yes.
الرئيس. Yes, he was before or still? I don't know.
No, he's current. He's the current president. Yeah.
Okay.
He's the current president.
Nah.
Of course, I know him. I met him before he was the president in UAE. I met him when he was there.
Abu Dhabi. Becoming the president is by vote, yes?
Yes, it is by vote, but it's from the executive committee. So we have several governing bodies,
Okay.
and the executive committee is it's composed of the representatives of the different regions, and they are the ones that I think are the presidents.
Okay.
Then we have the Secretary General, which is the executive director. Well, it's not the executive director, but he's the head of the executive body of Interpol, and he's Brazilian. Yeah. So he's my direct. Well, he's my boss.
Then he's your boss.
And then the president is our supervising.
He supervise your boss.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So there is like a specific number of each country like to be a part of the Interpol. Like we will say for France maybe like 500 people. From UK 200. From United States.
No. To work in Interpol, so countries are either seconding people, and we have that's really depends on.
So to be a part, my country must choose me.
Exactly. So it's either that or you're contracted, and that's the contracted position or advertised on our website, and anyone who's as resident of one of the 196 member countries can apply. That's
So after that, there is like an interview.
Exactly. There is an interview process and everything.
I must have experience in
You need to have for most of the positions, but not all of them, because we also have administrative positions. But for the executive director of these services, which is where I not, you usually have to have the minimum of 5 years of Please, the police.
Are you getting, are you need to?
I'm
Special operation.
They want to know what kind of purposes to brand and the type. Google or
And both.
we might force it to feel like
Yeah, like in my cat.
yeah,
Maybe on the, yeah, but the.
it's dark and it's
Yeah, maybe this is not the.
because the headlight is slightly different.
For technician.
You must know your.
Good job. Yeah.
Allora, lo giro. Scommessa prima, poi l'esame è bello. Scommesso che io vince con gioco. Sono fatto la scommessa la mattina del bello. Che per giocare, ho vinto il Paris Saint-Germain. Ho fatto per 5 euro ci ho buttato. Posso ha dato 72, 72 e 70. Ma tipo la promozione che stai tu giochi no, conosco la storia era quotata a 2 euro 5 però c'è la promozione ero ben prima
Vabbè, ma lui non è che fai commissione
no non è
Ricordati che Salamini è come se avessimo partecipato insieme.
quando ero ho cercato la vittoria del Napoli
Ok.
il parere è quello sì, però c'è la promozione io, quando ti dice partecipi, c'è il gold là, non so io.
Okay, let's start again. So I was saying impact of biotechnologies. So we can use biotechnologies in different ways and to enhance biological weapons. Well, if we are intended, so here are a few examples. We can use biotechnologies to enhance biological agents, so giving them new traits. What do we mean by that? We can allow them, for example, to go for different cell types. So instead of targeting the lungs, they are going to target another organ. We can increase their potency or their virulence. I can make a toxin more potent. We required less of it to kill more people. I can make bacteria or virus more virulent, replicate faster, create a disease that is stronger in the organism. I can give it antimicrobial resistance so that it resists to the treatments that we currently have. I can increase its environmental stability so that it is not it doesn't die that easily when I spread it in the environment. Biotechnology in many ways have simplified the acquisition or production of biological agents. Here is an example. In 2017, a group of Canadian researchers reconstituted an extinct pox virus. So pox viruses are the ones responsible, well, in humans, responsible for smallpox. They are currently causing the mpox outbreaks across the world for the past few years. But they were responsible until some years ago of horsepox in horses, and it's been a disease that has been completely eradicated. And some Canadian scientists decided that it would be a good idea to recreate it from scratch in the laboratory, and they wanted to see how expensive it would be. Well, you can actually do it now for less than $100,000. Well, that was in 8 years ago, so now it's probably even cheaper than that. Just by ordering the DNA through the mail. Before, 20 years ago, it would have required very expensive material, very specific expertise. But here, they were able to do it very quickly, and they published the methods to do it. You can easily multiply, get bacteria and viruses multiply because we have smaller and more efficient equipment, better production tool. You can increase the toxin yields. We have a better equipments for that, better methods. You can also produce toxins in organisms that we are not producing toxins, but they are better at multiplying. And we have easier purification processes, standardized ones. I was saying now almost everything is in kits. So there are many things that you couldn't do in the past that are much easier thanks to the evolution of biotechnology. Another way, another impact on biological threats that we've seen is the potential for decreased detection of biological agents. In changing the traits of your agents, well, you can change the symptoms evolution or the symptoms themselves. You can change the host range. A few years back, a team of scientists were able to render H5N1 influenza virus. They were able to make it able to spread through aerosol between mammals, which is something that we haven't seen yet. You can make biological agents not undetectable by conventional tests, so lots more difficult to respond to. You can create new biological agents. For example, you could create a completely new one, or you could broaden and create an infection in an unexpected host. And so you would not be looking for a specific agent because that's not what you would expect. Here is an example. In 2021, there was, in 2018, there was the African swine fever virus started to spread in Asia, and China was greatly affected. And there is still no vaccine, a licensed vaccine against this disease, and so lots of economic loss in the region, and China had those outbreaks of a disease that were similar, but had more mild symptoms, and that was detected a lot. That had an incubation period that was longer, and created a chronic disease in pigs, and they identified African swine fever as being the cause, but not their usual strain. And their investigation showed that it was probably linked to an unlicensed vaccine that was sold as a potential way of controlling the disease to farmers that were not aware or desperate for a solution, and that would make that would prevent the death of their animals, and those were sold by criminal groups, gangs that would exploit the needs and this desperation of those population, but it created a completely new outbreak in the country, and all that because of the use of uncontrolled biotechnology. The vaccines were not ready; they had not been approved, and someone in the lab probably wanted to make money and sold those vaccines to the wrong people. So an example of, so in this case, not being used for agrotourism, but definitely used for agrocrime, and enabled by biotechnologies. Another example, just the last one for this, when I was saying that we see the evolution of the biological threats and biotourism threats is not just linked to biology and biotechnology, is the development of unmanned aircraft systems, so drones. And it's a very it's very important in the biofield, because biological agents disperse or do not require a large payload. So you can have very small drones make a lot of damage. Those drones are already used for airborne delivery. So in many countries, seeing a drone somewhere doesn't raise any more attention. And they are already, there are many actually, drones that are already designed to target agriculture because they are used for farming. So if you are using those programmed drone, they are already targeting what you want to target as a terrorist. I'll be using, well, I have two examples here. The first one, so we had again in that same African swine fever outbreak in China. Well, while we had a gang selling fraudulent vaccines and creating disease outbreaks, we had another criminal gang that was using drones to actually threaten or drop meat close to pig farms, contaminated or not with African swine fever, and ransoming the farmers, saying, I'm going for your farms next, so sell me your pig at a cheap price before I come for you and spread the disease into your farm. That's how they were using those. The threat of disease spread. So So commercial pig farms started to install drone jamming systems to actually combat this type of technology. That's you didn't think, but that became a threat in this case. This is one example of a precision drone that are used for specific type of crops to target specific area of the plant. And so if you want to target this crop with a disease, all you have to do is provide the right bioagent, and then the programming is done. You just have to do the piloting. So you need a drone pilot, and the biological agent is easy to get. It's an easy way of destroying someone's plantation or threaten to destroy their crops. So that's something that we are looking a lot more into nowadays than 10 years ago. So how do we mitigate the threat of agroterrorism and agrocrime? Well, by identifying potential targets, increasing biosecurity measures, increasing response capabilities, and preparedness. So potential targets, so there are many targets. If we take every backyard farm and we can't protect everything. And so it's identifying the priority targets, but also identifying priority risks. And some countries, some diseases are already endemic, so they are not necessarily a priority. In some diseases, in some countries, some animal are not susceptible or not represent less of an asset. So you have to identify those priority risks, and you have to create your national biological agent list. We have at Interpol, we have one that is based on international perspective, but it cannot be applied like that by just any countries. Some of them are not relevant for all countries. And some of those who are not on our list are probably relevant, more relevant for other countries. So you want to have your biosecurity measures. So you want to secure your bioagents. You want to monitor your bioagents. You want to educate all your people who work with biological agents, and you want to report anything that is suspicious when it comes to biological agents. I'm talking about biosecurity. Is it a word that everybody's familiar with? Or is it something that needs to be explained? Biosecurity, biosafety?
There are several modules I know.
Yes, exactly. And so here we are not talking about biosecurity for agriculture, although we are in an agroterrorism presentation. Biosecurity from a law enforcement perspective is securing biological agents and biological and associated material from being misused or acquired by people, ill-intended people, which is different from biosafety, which is protecting yourself and the environment from biological agents. So here we are talking about limiting the access of biological agents and the material that is associated to it, so that it cannot be misused or acquired by ill-intended people. So it can be in the case of agroterrorism, that's also sometimes limiting access to carcasses that are that we know are infected with high-risk diseases. So that's if someone is ill-intended, it doesn't have easy access to it and create havoc somewhere else. Okay. And the next step is preparedness. So raising awareness about these kind of events, about the risk of misuse of biological agents, but also biotechnology and other technologies to create biological weapons, improving surveillance and reporting, and creating joint planning and training. We said we can't do it on our own. And I'm putting here the little, a little slide, which goes back to what are the different types of diseases that can be, well, what are the different type of crimes that can spread diseases in animals, and that's a lot of people are not aware of. And in animals, but if there are zoonotic diseases, in humans as well. So if you are not aware as a first line officer, a first responder, you can also contaminate yourself or your families. So it's good to be aware. And the last step is increasing response capabilities, detection capabilities and protective equipment, having joint procedures, multi-agency coordination, and information exchange about those incidents and the possibility of these incidents. And when it comes to detection for agroterrorism and agrocrime, a lot, well, in bio in general, but in we don't have detection equipment most of the time. So we have to rely on triggers and indicators, signs that make you think that maybe there is a biological agent involved in this incident or incident bound to happen. And for that, I will just share with you this document that was released this year, which is triggers and indicators of biological incident that we published a couple of months ago. And I'm only showing the part that is related to plants, but there are other chapters in it. And it shows what are the epidemiological indicators, but also what are the suspicious activities that should make people think that seeing that around fields maybe should raise the question of the possibility of deliberate attempts against agriculture. So the challenges, that's my conclusion slide, are so agrocrime and agroterrorism can have very high impacts, and surveillance should involve many species and pathogens. When we talk about bioterrorism, including targeting humans, we talk about one species, a few 10 pathogen toxins, well, 20. But when we talk about animals, there are hundreds of species and a few hundreds of pathogens. What makes things also complicated is that wildlife can be involved in further disease spreads. So when we put in place measures to respond to agroterrorism, even if we are looking at livestock, we also have to take into account that they have targeted livestock, but if you have a wildlife around it that is susceptible to the pathogen that is involved, they are potentially contaminated and they can spread the disease further. So you also have to take that into account when you are planning your response. New technologies, dual use technology, dual use research, increase the risk of agrotourism. Currently, there is very low global monitoring and reporting of agrotourism and agrocrime. There's limited information exchange on this, and that's why we are working a lot on awareness raising to get more information on what's happening at global level. And the bio tracker that I talked about in the Interpol presentation is also there to help us gather information about this. There are many agencies and different skills and expertise that are required for risk assessment, for a multi-agency coordination. So that's also complicate things and things that were not put in place before. I mean, everybody was focusing on human, and so for the human part, it is more set than for the animal and plant part. For the plant part, there is even less things done, even at international level. And so tools for fighting agrotourism needs to catch up with potential for misuse of technologies. That's questions, comments? I just killed you all.
Quick example test is it?
Yes, but they are there. So the quick presumptive testing.
Yes.
Exactly. So there, for detection of bioagents, there are quick presumptive testing, but they are very limited. They are limited to specific agents. Usually you have, if you have multiplex assays, they are limited to four toxins, four bacteria, and in theory, you can actually use any type of biological agent. If you don't know what you're looking for, and then there is this problem of sensitivity and the main toxins that are I mean, we always go for the most obvious toxins. I mean, the toxins for these assays are ricin, botulinum toxin, botulinum, staph enterotoxin B. Just check. What am I missing? Number 4. No, not. I said ricin, botulinum. Ricin, botulinum, seb, and the last one is usually tetanus.
Oh.
Usually, not always, and but that's 4. There are, you've seen on our list we have.
Yeah.
Exactly, we have 20. OPCW has 9 new priority toxins on their list, and so it's a. I mean, if you're lucky, and we see a lot more new toxins coming up every year being used against people. So because they are a lot easier to acquire and produce. So if you're lucky, it's one of the 4, but they are not necessarily the easiest to acquire. Plant toxin. So except for ricin, which is quite easy to get. Other plant toxins are a lot easier to produce and acquire, and they are not currently, there is currently no presumptive testing for it. So.
The past, yes, the bio ones, but
Yeah,
it didn't work.
it didn't work very well, and they discontinued it. So, yeah. So in fact, yeah, we are, I mean, mostly relying on those triggers and indicators. Yeah. Okay. So any other No. Checking time. Okay. So the last one, yes, the last presentation. I'll start it and then we'll have a break. Where is it? Let's just see.
Where are you based in?
We are based in Lyon. Yes, in France.
France.
Yeah. The originally Interpol was based in Vienna for a few years, and then it moved to London, and then Paris. That was before World War II. And then in 1989, it moved to Lyon, and it's been there since. There was not enough space in Paris to have us all.
So they moved to where?
Lyon.
Lyon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you live there.
Yes, I live there. Yeah. But we travel, most of us travel a lot. Okay, so I'll go back to so 3 types of biological incidents: natural, all those, and then unintentional events, accidents, and deliberate. So natural, well, as I was saying, it may be hard to determine the type of incidents without a thorough investigation. In the US, there are very few cases of human play, very few, and it's on their list of biological agents of concerns. So as soon as they see plague in human, they are thinking maybe it's deliberate. In this case, well, they investigated. Now it was caused by the cats. Okay. The cat had the plague and it scratched the owner, and the owner got the plague. Okay. Accidental. So it's those non-intentional events, either because not complying with the rules, mishandling things, etc. But they can also have grave consequences, and they can lead to administrative penalties. So in this case, when was it? In 2020, the vaccination plants, a vaccine production plant, sorry, was producing Brucella vaccines, and they used a decontamination solution which had passed the expiration dates, and the exhaust fumes was spread through the city containing still active Brucella, and they actually contaminated thousands of people. So they tested almost 22,000 people, and over 3,000 people were positive. They closed the plant. They fired the director and some other people in the place. The guys got fined. So there was all investigation around it to know who was responsible for that. But it was accidental. It was not man-made. But at first, when they saw so many brucellosis cases in a specific area, they couldn't rule out that whether it was intentional or not. So they had to do a full investigation to see what was the source and the cause of the outbreak. And then deliberate. So one example, this man in India, he decided that it was a good idea to get a compensation from the government by using cobra venom on his wife and his children, or his daughter. So, so he, in his case, criminal intent was proved thanks to the forensic pathologist, actually, who thought it was weird that the wife and daughter were found with this exactly the same bite, the same snake bite on the leg, and that's the snake was still in the room when they arrived. So they did a full investigation. They found out that the guy had looked up on the internet a compensation scheme from the government for snake bites, for snake death, snake-related death, where to get cobra. I mean, all kinds of research he had done prior to his wife and daughter being killed. So, well, this guy is in prison, but without this investigation, they wouldn't have necessarily linked the case. They would have thought, okay, that's an accident. So it's important to have a thorough investigation and to recognize what are the signs of a suspicious incident. So in bio, we are distinguishing between overt and covert deliberate release. So overt release are the ones that are announced, either because you have received specific threats, a warning or intelligence. In my South Africa case, there was a direct threat to the government, so overt attack. It can be ill-concealed, discovery of means of dispersal, other signature of activities or apparatus. You see someone going around his house with a full PPE doing weird stuff. Just that would be overt. You discover questionable or suspicious material, suspicious material. That's also a sign. Covert ones are unannounced, no threats or warning, well concealed, and unnoticeable. There is no physical indication of the agent being spread. And they are the ones that are the most difficult to identify as being deliberate. And that's what poses the most difficulties for us. And that's usually when the first one, yes?
Sorry,
No,
once ever like when the release is overt, is it ever named? Do you ever use it as an indicator whether it was accidental or intentional?
So overt is usually an indicator of deliberate. Covert, well, so most likely will be the first suspicion of something being deliberate will come from the health services, saying those data, epidemiological data, don't match what we should do, what we should see. Sorry, there is something that is wrong, and that's where they are. We hope they are alerting law enforcement, saying, "Look, that doesn't happen. That is not what you should normally see. That is not the right season for flu. That is not the type of symptoms that we should see. We have a sequence of events that doesn't match. So but that's the only way we can actually spot a covert incident, and that's why probably we miss a lot of reporting on those, because if you don't know what you're looking for, you can just miss it. That's no, you're welcome. So yeah, so that's what makes bio a lot more complicated to handle than the other CBRN incidents. Is that bio is everywhere. Biological incident happen every day, everywhere, and I mean, chemical is not natural. The radiological one or nuclear. You know where you're supposed to have them. That's and if it's not where it's supposed to be, it's a problem. But for bio, that's it's not. So that's where we really rely heavily on our health systems. And when I say health, I'm talking about plant, human, and animal system. So I've talked about it. In the end, it will matter for prosecution whether we are talking about crime or terrorism, but for the investigation itself, doesn't matter. We want to prove deliberate. It will change for the penalties, but the prosecution will be different. The sentencing will be different, but don't think biocrime has a lesser impact, as less damaging, it's less how would you say, will be lower key, just because they can be exactly the same. What is the difference is the motivation behind. Either you want it for your personal gain, or you do it for ideological beliefs. That's okay. I'm not going back to the definition. Well, we've done that. I'll just finish the introduction and then we can have a break. So biotourism at the global level. So here are just open source data that are displayed of biotourism related cases of public knowledge since 2018. And they are displayed depending on whether they were stopped at the intent stage. So articulated threats, hoax, and propaganda. And when I say hoax, I'm not talking about the white powder letters, because otherwise I would put the whole globe in yellow. Okay. White powder letters are happening every day somewhere in the world, so I'm not putting that. Then orange are acquisition attempts, acquisition or production attempts and foil plots, and bioterrorist attacks are in red. So, but a few countries are in red. So those are the ones that we see in the media. Many countries actually avoid having those incidents being reported there. So through BioTracker, but also before that, we were receiving information on different attacks and foiled attempts. So you see, even if it's much less than explosions and use of explosives and everything, biotourism exists and is being used in the world, and almost all continents from what we see in the news. So I'm not going back to the Bromwich, but that's you have more information on that slide. So that's just for your information. Going back on the previous case, you have additional figures and linking back. Okay, but I said that we will do a break. But just so you see that it started in 2020 in 1989, where they found the first outbreak. They concluded at the end of the year that that was a deliberate incident at the Ministry of Agriculture level. In 2006, that's the guy who confessed that it was him. And that he did it, that he was responsible for it. And in 2006, the federal police concluded to international introduction, but they have no way to link this guy to the actual introduction. Plus, the 5 guys that he was mentioning were his accomplices or have high position in the government, at high position in the government at the time. So there was also probably maybe not too much will to go and dig further, but so that's how the investigation went. But when they went back in 2006 to investigate this, they had almost nothing to base their investigation on. That's so they concluded that the outbreak was not cannot be attributed to natural vectors of dissemination that was linked to an international introduction, but that's pretty much it. So what was the issue? So they had 2 separate investigations, one epidemiological, one criminal. They had very limited microbial forensic information because they didn't have the plant sequencing databases at the time. They have no genetic tools and there are limited technology for the investigator, the police investigators. They have no compromised crime scene to investigate. The crime scene had been spread with chemicals, burned to limit the spread of the disease. They had no credible suspect at the time of the incident. They were investigating foreign interest, potentially criminals, but they had no real leads. So it was a very difficult investigation, and in the end, no real results came out of it. We'll have a break.
Thank you.
Yes, I give you my.
Or we can do either. Well, actually, I can take your email. Tell me, well, write it. Perfect. Okay.
Thank you so much.
No, you're very welcome. Very welcome.
Stay. That's real something about pricing, because I think you should know. I was just recently conquered my investment. At the chemical brand.
Yes.
And I think it's very easy to put up in the from the bottom line, because I think it's basically the grinding them and then having an organic solvent. Wash it with put 2 or 3 phase away, keep the organic phase, and that's where the rice is, and then that's basically it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super easy to use.
And then just you let the organic solvent evaporate or crystallize it.
Exactly. You evaporate it.
Yeah, just evaporate, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's super
Free,
easy.
yeah.
I've been using it actually on diets. Wanted to get rid of that. Of the new boyfriend of yeah. Well, they were not good enough in chemistry. They actually put it in alcohol in the alcohol drink. So the guy only got some mild symptoms.
Yeah, it's not.
No. That was not the right thing.
In that case, he might better use some gasoline or acetone or whatever, but that is not.
So it's yeah.
A couple of years ago, I ordered a couple of bags with castor beans,
Yes.
just for training purposes for our units. And I think I ordered somewhere around 20 or 30 bags of castor beans.
Oh, come on.
And I made the payment really. You could really follow because I got a credit card, so.
Yeah.
And I figured, how long will it take? I get a phone call. Nothing. And for that training purposes, I used the bags and I had some white powder and some nothing more, nothing.
Yeah.
And then just to see if people would know
Exactly.
make believe, but because as far as it was well, basically just put the organic solvent with it, wash it out with water, get rid of the watery layer, and then this is it.
That's well, the countries I travel the most, you find castor bean growing on the side of the street.
And because they're really nice flowers.
No, but what I mean is that
Yeah, the beans themselves, yeah.
the beans you find them in the market.
Yeah.
And the plants, they are growing wild.
Yeah.
That's one of the first. I remember the first time. Well, my mom used to have them in the garden because they are nice. One of the first time I traveled in summer breaks. We go to, and we didn't know this place. We crossed the park, and I was just. Has to be castor plants, and they were like, where? See, there. They were growing super high. They were like, we can take that for the training tomorrow. Let's pick some. That's and then I bought some back for the office. At the bottom of the Eiffel Tower. Yeah. And not that long ago, I mean, I think Lyon is a little bit more sensitive to it. But 3 years ago, I picked I picked my castor beans for training on the street because they were growing them as ornamental plants. I was just like, well, I'll go at night. I was just still, I'll go at night. Just checking. Nobody sees it.
No, we have one system, things were nice in, might have been used, that was about 50 years ago, there was a guy who was really crazy. He had killed prosecuted in his house, just because they found something that looked like rice in the house. I don't know the alcohol, but then he said, or a year and a half ago, we had new taxes, so they made people pay for the suicide, then they made taxes cheap.
Yeah.
And they didn't work out for it.
And there are more and more. We see more and more.
Yeah.
Those, including writing, but not just writing. Well, in Germany, 2 months ago, they arrested again someone that's a teenager making writing in his garage or his. I
Yeah, I
think
was that they apprehended somebody who was making it, but
Yeah.
they didn't get context of it.
That's
Quick.
that's the UK.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
A teenager things.
Yeah.
The rights of the day. It says
Maybe something like equal people I've never done it, but I think I can do it.
yeah, exactly. No, but in their cases it was both radicalized
Okay.
kids.
Oh, yeah, then,
Yeah, they found not just writing. But, in the UK that's the Salisbury studying, you know, that's this guy who had rising in his bedroom. Yeah, really sick. Sick. And the one in Germany, a few months ago, 2 months ago, he was also trying to make explosives. Yeah, exactly, but it's similar in making sure. Yeah.
crazy room.
Yeah. Okay, last part. Who's familiar with the Ameritrax, anthrax letters in the US? When it's most famous case, but
All of us.
all
Oh,
of
I don't say it.
you
It has been mentioned many times.
mentioned many times. Have you been through the investigation of it? Okay, so that's yes. The different steps. Okay, can go quickly. I mean, well, we'll see also what have been the lessons learned from it. So it started a week after the September 11th events. So the first anthrax letters were mailed. We had the first person showing symptoms and hospitalized was a couple of weeks later, and he died the next day. And then new letter found on October 8th in the National Enquirer, so at the media offices. The next day, more anthrax letters were posted, and that's when the FBI investigation started. So you see, the investigation started 3 weeks after the first anthrax letters were mailed, 5 days after the first inhalation anthrax case was detected. And that's, for us, it's a very strong, that's a trigger for law enforcement anywhere in the world. And it is a trigger and it should be a trigger for any public health institution. Inhalation anthrax is very rare. Most of the anthrax cases that are seen in the world are usually cutaneous or gastrointestinal anthrax. When you see these type of symptoms, it should raise alarm that something's unusual, and potentially that comes from deliberate attacks. But in this case, it still took 5 days for law enforcement to be involved. Then we had more people testing positive for anthrax, and on October 15th, the letter found at Tom Dashiell's offices. So more people get infected in October, testing positive or hospitalized. And that's by the time October, well, by the end of November, we have our 5th death from inhalation anthrax. So it's a biological incident that is concentrated over a period of 2.5 months. But the investigation itself lasted much more longer than that. So because at the time FBI, it was the first time the FBI was facing this kind of investigation, they didn't have any clue of how to conduct the forensic investigation and where to conduct it. They didn't have a place to do conventional forensic of biocontaminated evidence. They didn't know where to sort their mail. So it took them over a week to find a facility to do the screening of those hundreds of bags of potentially contaminated mail, to install negative pressure and air filtration and hair sampling in that warehouse that they finally found, and develop new sampling techniques to be able to track the envelopes that were containing anthrax spores. Took them a week to complete the full screening of the bags. Out of the 635 bags that they screened, around 60 tested positives, and 7 of those bags were considered hot. And then all the hot bags were hand sorted by hand to find the letters. Okay, so
Every barrel is about a bag.
each barrel has bag.
Contains that.
Contains bags, yeah. So that's how they transported suspected potentially contaminated bags. So those barrels are sealed to avoid transferring contamination during transportation. So they found the leaky letter, and then they started classical forensic analysis. They needed to lift fingerprints. They needed to do graphology on those letters. But that's something they had never done in a confined biosecurity environment. They discovered, well, they had to apply different methodologies there, sorry. And so that's the Leahy letter. And so they had to rethink how they would do the procedures, but also think what is that they could do and what is that they cannot do. And they had to do that on the spot because they were not prepared. In parallel to that, they were doing also microbial forensic on the anthrax letters. So characterizing the strains microscopically, but also the genetic composition, looking at the chemical composition of the surrounding of the spores, carbon dating, and what they identify is that strain of bacillus was derived. So the strains of bacillus from the different envelopes that were sent were derived from a unique pool of spore preparation that was coming from the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute for Infectious Diseases. So they knew the source of it, and they also identified that there were at least 2 preparations made from that same pool. But the strains were coming from there. They started an investigation. So they're starting their investigation working with Fort Detrick Institute that has been involved initially in the identification of the strain. That's the other thing. They had worked with these guys, but then now they were starting questioning them as this potential source of the agent. They initially suspected Stephen Hatfield, who worked at the Fort Detrick Institute. So he was named person of interest in 2002. Then charges were dismissed, but Hatfield he complained and got damaged from his suit against the government. Actually, he received 5.8 million settlements for being falsely accused or suspected in that investigation. Then they started suspecting Bruce Ivins, another person who worked at Fort Detrick, who had helped the investigators, the FBI investigators, work on the case previously. But we are in 2008 now. So many years had passed during the time they had worked on the evidence they had collected, trying to figure out who had worked with a strain inside Fort Detrick, who had access to it, who could have who could have had the motivation to deliberately spread it. And in the end, Ivins committed suicide in end of July 2008. And so before it could be proven or not that he was the one who was responsible for the anthrax attacks. He had potentially a motivation because his funding was cut. His anthrax research funding was cut at that time, and the investigation of these attacks concluded in 2010. So almost 9 years of 8 years and a half of investigation to conclude that, well, it could not be proven, but there was strong evidence that this guy was responsible for the anthrax, the American anthrax. That's so these attacks, although was very well, quite. I mean, we can see it both ways, but it was over 2 months and a half. We had a limited number of casualties. If we look at it, 5 deaths, 17 injured, but it's employed 25 to 30 full-time investigators from the FBI, from the US Postal Inspection Services and other law enforcement agencies and federal prosecutors. There were more than 10,000 witness interviews conducted across the world, 80 searches, over 6,000 items recovered as potential evidence. The question here is, what do you do with all those evidence? Some of them being contaminated, so you can't just store them in your regular regular evidence room. About 5,007 about 6,000 environmental samples recovered from 60 locations, and it costs around 3,020 million in decontamination, knowing that some places, some postal places are still closed because they can't prove that it's fully decontaminated. So in itself, something that has a limited casualty impact and huge consequences. So when I was saying, don't think low impact is biocrime, large impact is bioterrorism, has nothing to do with it. Whether it's in terms of casualties or for the rest, it's really about motivation. But a small limited incident can have really far-reaching consequences for both the public and for law enforcement as well. And here we are only talking about the law enforcement part, but there is also the whole health side of things, where, I mean, we are not counting the cost of public health intervention here. Treatments and the treatment of those patients who had anthrax costs also hundreds of thousands dollars. That's it's and there are investigations as well. So it was an event that changed very much the way biological incidents are investigated. That raised the awareness of governments on the necessity to put in place better and better ways of investigating them, and to have preparedness efforts put in place to anticipate these challenges that comes with the investigation of biological incidents, because you can't do your forensics work in most of cases in the same place, in the place you usually do it. You cannot store your forensic evidence in the place you usually store them. You have a lot more samples to collect in the biological CBRN cases than when you have a regular incident. You have to work with different partners. All that, this example has started the work of other countries in that area. This single event. Questions before I show this short video? comments? No, okay. So, big,
This is about the cost dimension.
sorry?
Storage is,
Yeah, exactly.
it's madness.
Exactly. Storage is madness and it's a real headache. Because we were talking about Bruce Hivins and the fact, so him, but also when I was talking about the Brazilian case where
Yeah.
it is, well, one of the possibilities that it's a guy from the Ministry of Agriculture working on the fungus who brought the disease into that part of the country. I will just show you a short video on internal and what we call the internal and external threats.
She's working with dangerous pathogens not only face the threat of death or diversion of outsiders, but the threat of insiders cannot be ignored. Outsiders can include criminals and terrorist cells, but also visiting scientists, students, and short-term contractors who might attempt to steal biological agents-related equipment, information, software, or technology at a legitimate facility. Insiders, in contrast, are trusted members of the staff who have been granted unescorted access and are familiar with laboratory security procedures and equipment. Such individuals might be motivated to divert dual-use biological agents and equipment for a variety of reasons, including resentment, financial and external pressure, psychological, personal problems, or recruitment into a terrorist organization. Should a theft or diversion be detected, the incident should be reported promptly to the government agency responsible. Combating insider and outsider threats depends on ensuring that access, diversion, and misuse of dual-use equipment is as difficult as possible without hindering its legitimate use. Law enforcement plays a role in this area by supporting background checks for staff, implementation of security measures, and by investigating thefts in these facilities.
So insider threats is it's a lot more frequent than we think. That's the thing, and it's more complicated to manage. If you have outsider threats, most of the time you'll see that something has happened because it's unusual. An insider knows what are your security measures, knows how to access things. So it's a lot more, and usually has, not always, expertise in the area or around the biological agents that they are looking for. So it's a lot more complicated to spot. So it's also, I'm going back to the triggers and indicators, but that's where it's also important to have trained staff in facilities that are handling biological agents to be able to spot what is unusual in behaviors, what is unusual in the environments that they are working on. That's one of the main issues. We have several countries we work with, but one of them is their insider threat usually comes from their because their securities is less robust. Let's say they have less resources. Their insider threats come from their cleaning staff. That's so they don't have the expertise, but they have access to many areas of the facility. So it's okay. Going to the 2018 ricin plot in Germany. Have you seen it before? No? Okay. So this was initially brought up to the attention of the police by FBI actually. There was a flag on sale of equipment, including several coffee grinders to the same person in a very short time. And this guy also ordered castor beans. So that was flagged to the police in Germany and to the federal police, who then contacted the local police offices, and they worked together with the state criminal police office. The customs authority was also involved together they had a joint investigation and in operation with the Federal Criminal Police Office, Unit ST23, which is specialized in CBRNE incidents, and the Robert Koch Institute, which is their public health institute, which is responsible for sampling biological agents in a crime scene. So they have well-defined roles, but it's the Public Health Institute that comes in support for this type of operations. So what they found so it was a very short investigation in this case. They foiled the plot. What they found in their when they went to the house, when they did the first assessment, was that the threat of ricin being produced was credible, because there are manuals which describe a feasible process on how to produce certain biological agents. The material listed in manuals are generally easy to acquire, that terrorist groups have shown interest in the use of biological agents. The production of at least ricin seemed possible for persons without specific knowledge. They had gained additional intelligence on the person who wanted to produce ricin. There was risk of self-endangerment and the purification of biological pathogens out of the public health environments or chemical environments requires a certain know-how or the support of specialists. So that was balancing a little bit the risk or the threats of this person who had been flagged as a potential terrorist, to be able to do it. But their conclusion was that the threat of an attack involving biological agents seemed low compared to common means, but possibly could not be ruled out completely. So they went to the house of the guy, and they found that male suspect and his wife were believed to have planned jihadist attack using ricin as part of an IED, which is something that we see more and more as a trend. People trying to combine IED and toxins. They found many unprocessed castor bean, as well as tools for processing them. The suspect has already managed to produce ricin, a little bit more than 84 milligrams of it. He had ordered castor beans online and was guided by a person, by a messenger, how to produce the ricin. And he was arrested in June 2018, and his wife was arrested a couple of weeks later. But that's one of the bags of castor beans that they found at his premises. So both him and his wife were charged with plotting Islamist-motivated attacks. Using biological weapons. He was sentenced to 10 years. She was sentenced to 8 years for complicity. They also had a hamster to test the potency of the poison at home. So in this case, very short investigation. Also because everything was there. They had lots of evidence. They were able to trace back many of of his purchases, some of them back to other countries. And in this case, a very complementary work between law enforcement and public health from the start, starting at the credibility threat assessment. So we have biological incidents happening on a regular basis. The question is, are they or are they not a deliberate? This one is an example of New York, a 75-year-old Brooklyn man found dead with toxic biohazard material, as reported in the news. He had several jars with biohazard labels on it, with the sketches and drawings of a potential dispersal material. It just happened that there was nothing dangerous at his home. The guy had was just a little how do you say, disturbed. That's and he died from natural causes. So nothing, but the intervention there had to be done had to be dealt with as a CBRNE incident, a CBRN incident, and an investigation was launched. We have, as I was saying, 100 letters being sent every day somewhere in the world. Some of them are actually containing a dangerous material. So they can't be ignored. It's not because there are, 99.8% of them are innocuous that we should turn a blind eye to them. So what is challenging about investigating biological incidents is the diversity of pathogens and targets, pathogens and toxins and targets. So identifying the biological agent that is involved, but also monitoring all the species that can be affected and looking at what are having the right tools to actually investigate them. The potency of those agents, very small quantities are needed for many of those agents. Most toxins are much more potent than any chemical that exists. Their origin determine whether they are natural, accidental, deliberate. From the first onset, it's already difficult to know. It's often difficult to know whether it's one or the other. You have to investigate before you actually understand what's happening. So making the difference between what is background noise and what is a real sign. Because as we were discussing earlier, we are very limited in detection equipment. It's not chem, it's not rad. Detection equipment is limited to a few pathogens and toxins. And many of the signs, even if you are infected, are non-specific. If you come tomorrow with cold flu symptoms, nobody is going to be able to tell you if it's a malaria, the flu, the cold. a COVID from looking at you. So that's or anthrax or whatnot. Covert attacks, silent spread, no crime scene. You arrive as a forensic investigator, 3 weeks later, or even 3 days later, sometimes is enough for the crime scene to have disappeared. But it's not like you have had a big boom and you're here. So what do you investigate? Where are your forensics evidence? If you don't know where the crime scene is, or if the crime scene is gone. And knowing what are the indicators of bioterrorism. For many people on the ground, they are not aware of that. They don't know how to recognize those indicators. The availability of agents and technology and knowledge, more and more, as I highlighted before. So the agents, you find rising in some countries. You find rising by the road. You just go and grab. But there are other toxins, plant toxins that you can find very easily. The knowledge, you just go on internet. You share, it's shared through, and the technology is more and more available. And then surveillance requires expertise, databases, reporting, information sharing, and it's also harder and harder because there is more and more misinformation and disinformation around all those biological events. So doing surveillance requires also to sift through and sort through all this amount of misinformation and disinformation. If I go back to my example of this morning on the FMG outbreak in Hungary, some people were saying that's a deliberate attack. That's someone is deliberately spreading FMD in our country. No proof of that, but some people started repeating it. That's one example. There are plenty of other examples surrounding that. So in the surveillance, we also have to deal with this. So the main issue, I'll go back to that, but is to identify that an incident has occurred or is about to occur, and it's knowing and identifying those indicators of a potential incident and those triggers and indicators that will indicate intent, acquisition, production, use, the presence of a suspicious biological agent or unusual epidemiological patterns or unexpected modes of contamination. Who knows what they are? How do you report them? That's very important. So that summarizes a little bit everything that has been said before, and I'm almost done. I'm going to let you off the hook. So, countries have developed national solutions to try to tackle this bioterrorism, and this evolves around five pillars: roles and responsibilities, training, having the right resources, concluding agreements with and having documents that are structuring your response and your partnership with the different stakeholders that will be involved in the prevention, preparedness, and response to bioterrorism, and having specialized laboratories that you work with and that will be able to work with you, especially when it comes to forensic examination of biocontaminated evidence. And to do that, so you have to take into account the contaminated conventional evidence examination aspects, the microbial forensic aspects, the reciprocal training that is required for people doing conventional evidence, being able to work on contaminated conventional evidence, for the people doing microbial work to be able to do it with a forensic mindset, and then to create that laboratory network that is necessary, because you have so many types of biological incidents: plants, animal, humans, toxins, viruses, fungi, bacteria. All that cannot be done within the confine of one laboratory. So you have to have a laboratory network. So last slide, and you're off. So we work with our countries on the joint CRIMEP investigation model that was established following the Ameritrax incidents. And that's what we are promoting with our member countries, to make sure that the expertise and resources that are available at national levels are actually maximized from the start of the investigation, so that the threat is properly assessed, and throughout the investigation, we are not missing information. We are building up on the expertise of each sector to have the most efficient investigation as possible. Thank you very much. Questions, comments?
Thank you very much.
Colomba, ci sei? Sì. Guarda, la lezione della mattina è finita, quindi stiamo andando in pausa pranzo. Se vuoi interromperla.